The sky above Vortigaunt 9 split like a wound torn across the flesh of reality. Magenta lightning arced through the iron clouds, and from the heart of that impossible storm came a voice. Not words, but laughter. It was not the laughter of joy nor cruelty, but of a mind that refused to care for either. Tech priests knelt upon the battlements of the Forge World's cathedral foundry, chanting Binharic prayers as their sensor arrays screamed warnings of a growing warp breach. The air rippled and reality groaned like metal under strain. Then through that tear something fell. The object was humanoid, though clad in unfamiliar crimson armor that looked soft like flesh. It landed in a crater of molten slag, smoke rising around it. The machine spirits shrieked in protest. Magos Delta, overseer of the foundry's sanctum, approached with a cadre of Skitarii guards. His vox crackled as he examined the readings. A no-known life signature, he murmured, and yet persistent biosign. The figure stirred. The Magos froze as two white eyes blinked through the smoke. The stranger groaned, brushing off cinders. Okay, either I just respawned or someone needs to patch this server, he muttered. The Mechanicus understood nothing of his words. To them, the tone was madness, a string of heretical syllables spoken with irreverent rhythm. The Skitarii raised their galvanic rifles. The stranger looked up, cocking his head. Aye, they're Power Rangers, he waved. A bolt round struck him square in the chest, blowing a hole clean through. He looked down, frowned, then looked up again. Rude. The wound closed. Flesh reknit with wet sounds that made even the most hardened guards recoil. He dusted off the wound as if it were an inconvenience. Right, I see how it is. He leapt forward faster than the machine spirits could calculate. Two Skitarii went flying, armor crumpling against a wall. Delta activated his servo skull, chanting litanies of machine protection, but the stranger was everywhere at once, not as a blur but as a series of violent contradictions. The Magos felt the air ripple around him, smelled ozone and blood, and heard something between a joke and a scream. Can't we talk about this like civilized gun nuts? The stranger ducked under a plasma shot, kicked a rifle away, and for reasons no one could fathom, bowed deeply afterward. My name's Wade, Wade Wilson, but you can call me whatever gets you through confession. The name meant nothing in Imperial archives. The stranger's speech patterns made linguistic servitors seize. Delta signaled for reinforcement. Vox channels erupted with orders from the Inquisition. Reports of a warp incursion, psychic anomalies, and a stalking demon are spreading confusion. Within hours, the Forge world descended into martial lockdown. From orbit, a Grey Knight strike cruiser altered course toward the anomaly. Wade, meanwhile, had found a discarded cogitator terminal and was typing with childish curiosity. No internet, no YouTube, and wow, this thing runs slower than dial-up. He paused, glancing upward as though hearing voices. No one else heard them, but he did. The whispers slithered through the air, curling around his skull like cold breath. You amuse us, one voice said, ancient, vast, and layered with hunger. Another voice followed, smoother, cunning, a soul without tether drifting between madness and creation. How delightful. Wade blinked. Great, now the voices in my head are British. The air shimmered again, not visibly but spiritually. Even Wade, in all his chaos, sensed that something around him shifted, as if four unseen titans had turned their gaze toward him. He flexed his fingers, looked at his healing chest wound, and smiled. Well, if you're gonna monologue in my brain, at least buy me dinner first. Somewhere laughter echoed, not his this time, but something impossibly distant and cruel. The Forge world's temperature dropped. Delta's sensors detected reality distortion spikes. It's happening again, he rasped. The veil thins. Outside the manufactorum, servitors malfunctioned. The sky bled color. The smell of iron and burnt ozone filled the lungs of every mortal on the surface. Wade stood amid the chaos, oblivious, turning in slow circles like a child seeing snowfall for the first time. Man, this place is grim. You guys ever heard of landscaping? The ground cracked beneath him, glowing faintly with warp energy. Runes appeared etched into stone by invisible hands. Somewhere far above, the Grey Knight's cruiser entered orbit, its captain murmuring a prayer. Purge the anomaly, let no taint remain. Wade looked up just in time to see the sky ignite. Drop pods screamed downward like comets. Oh, come on, he sighed, pulling a pistol from nowhere. Space cops again? The first pod hit the ground in a storm of dust and fire. From within emerged towering figures of silver, warriors clad in sanctified armor, eyes burning with psychic fire. Their leader raised his nemesis sword, voice amplified through vox amplifiers. "By decree of the Inquisition demon, you shall be unmade." Wade cocked his head, lips curling into a grin beneath the red mask. "Unmade? Buddy, I've been unmade more times than your emperors had birthdays." The Grey Knights advanced, bolters ready, purity seals fluttering in the wind. The warp trembled again, this time not from them but from him. The laughter returned louder now, as if the cosmos itself were holding its breath, and for one terrifying heartbeat even the demons within the warp paused to listen. The drop zone burned for hours. Smoke coiled into the heavens like black prayers, and the smell of sanctified promethium clung to everything it touched. When at last the fires dimmed, the Grey Knights formed a perimeter around the crater, weapons drawn and auspexes humming. At the center of it all stood Wade Wilson, unarmed, unbothered, and somehow still humming a tune. His suit was charred, half of his mask torn, revealing a smile no sane creature should still possess after what he had endured. Brother Captain Malakair signaled for containment. He regenerates through blessed fire, maintains psychic null fields. Aegis wards shimmered in concentric circles, sealing the ground with purity sigils, but Wade only squinted at the glowing runes and tapped one with a boot. "Ew, guys always do circles. Ever tried a triangle? Much easier. Much easier." A thunderclap struck. A psychic blast threw him backward, splitting the ground open. He landed hard and laughed, clutching his ribs. Yep, that hurt. 10 out of 10 for effort, no originality points though. Malakair advanced, reciting the Canticle of Exorcism. Silver runes ignited along his blade. "Name yourself, abomination." Wade blinked. Already did. Tin Man. Wade Wilson, the mouthy one. His words seemed to slither through the air, incomprehensible to every translating spirit. The machine spirits recoiled. The very vox lines faltered. The captain felt his connection to the Emperor waver, like a candle guttering before unseen wind. He tightened his grip. "The warp stains your tongue. You will be silenced." The strike came fast. A holy blur of steel and psionics, but Wade's body flowed around the blade like quicksilver. The sword severed his arm. He merely stared at the stump side and picked the limb up. "You forgot the warranty." Flesh reattached with a hiss of steam. Malakair's faith wavered. "Impossible." Wade looked at him, eyes suddenly distant. "Yeah, been hearing that a lot lately." In orbit, the Inquisition ship Sanctum Obsidian received the signal. Interrogator Hestara Vox, servant of the Ordo Malleus, watched from the bridge. Through auger feeds, she saw the heretic move, not with speed but with the uncanny logic of dreams. His presence was a psychic paradox, a wound that refused to close. "Retrieve him," she commanded. "If he is warp spawn, the Emperor will know his purpose." Within the hour, the Grey Knights subdued Wade through combined null field resonance. His body went slack as hundreds of containment sigils glowed across the terrain. Bound in energy shackles, he was transported to the ship's containment vault. The cell was cold, not physically, but spiritually. The air was thick with the residue of prayers repeated for millennia. The metal walls bore the scars of other captives, though none still lived to remember them. Wade sat cross-legged, humming softly. "I've been in worse hotels," he said to no one in particular. His voice echoed oddly, as if the ship itself were uncertain whether to carry it. Interrogator Vox entered. She wore black armor inlaid with golden scripture, her face calm, her eyes sharp. "Wade, a creature," she began. "Do you know where you are?" Wade smiled through the half-burned mask. Judging by the interior design, somewhere between medieval dungeon and Catholic spaceship. She didn't flinch. "You have crossed the Emperor's domain unbidden. Explain your origin." Wade tilted his head. He hit her. "Well, funny story. 1 minute I'm fighting something. The next there's this huge tear in reality, colors like melted Skittles, and then boom, I'm in your charming universe. You guys have issues, by the way." Her servo skull hissed. "Irreverence will not protect you." She stepped closer, activating the sanctified brand at her wrist. Holy light flared, scalding the air. "You carry corruption. Speak truth, or the Emperor's gaze will strip you of falsehood." Wade stared into the light. For a fleeting instant his usual humor faltered. Beneath the scars and madness there was something tired, ancient, and deeply human. "You really think he's still watching?" The words froze her. The air turned heavy. "What did you say?" He leaned back, resting his head against the wall. "That throne of his, as they say, he's alive, right? Right? Guiding everyone through your space magic faith thing. But I don't hear him. Do you? The question slithered through her faith like a blade. She activated the pain litanies, flooding his cell with psychic agony. Wade convulsed, flesh burning, bones twisting, and then laughed again. See? Told you. No answer. For the first time, Vox hesitated. The psychic residue around him was unlike any demon she'd ever encountered. It wasn't hunger or pride or despair. It was absurdity, an endless contradiction that mocked the logic of both faith and corruption. Elsewhere in the ship, astropaths screamed in their sleep. Warp currents shifted. 4 ancient minds stirred. They felt the anomaly even through the thick veil of the materium. A mortal soul that defied pain, death, and reason. A soul without anchor or allegiance. In the throne's silent vastness, even the Emperor's light dimmed for a heartbeat. Vox turned away, shaken. Behind her, Wade whispered to the empty air, voice soft now, almost reverent. Hey, whoever's out there, big gold guy, shiny armor, spooky skeleton throne, if you're listening, blink twice. Silence. Only the low hum of the ship answered. He smiled faintly, eyes half closed. I didn't think so. The warp outside the sanctum obsidian rippled again, faint and cold, like laughter smothered under miles of iron. The god emperor did not respond, but the chaos gods had begun to listen. The sanctum obsidian drifted in orbit over Vortigern 9, its hull aglow with sigils of warding, every circuit and servo hissing in quiet prayer. Within its cold heart, the containment sanctum thrummed with restrained psychic tension. Tech priests whispered binary litanies, grey knights stood in silent vigil, and the air itself seemed reluctant to move. At the center of it all sat Wade Wilson, bound by chains of sanctified adamantium and encased in a shimmering psychic barrier that flickered like dying starlight. His head lolled lazily to one side, humming a tune that did not exist in any imperial record. The tribunal chamber was arranged in concentric tiers, inquisitors above, mechanicus adepts below, their voices a constant murmur of suspicion. Interrogator Vox stood beside her master, Lord Inquisitor Belius Dragar, whose presence radiated authority like heat. He had hunted demons across half the segmentum solar and broken psychers by mere gaze, yet even he looked unsettled as the being in red sat before him, unscarred despite every sanctified measure meant to tear him apart. Proceed, Dragar commanded. His voice was gravel wrapped in liturgy. State the charges. Vox read from her slate. The accused stands guilty of heretical origin, warp contamination, mockery of holy law, and the willful defilement of speech in the presence of sanctified men. She paused. He also refuses to stop talking. Deadpool raised his head. In my defense, silence is overrated. The Astarte standing guard twitched, fingers tightening on triggers. Dragar did not react, his cybernetic eye word scanning every molecule of the intruder. You are no demon of the traditional type, he said at last. Your aura is not of the immaterium, yet you persist in defying causality. Explain yourself. Wade grinned beneath his cracked mask. Oh, that's easy. I'm Canadian. A ripple of confusion spread through the chamber. Even the machine spirits faltered. Dragar's tone sharpened. That is not a classification recognized by the Lex Imperialis. I guess that's your loss. The lights dimmed as the null field surged. Suppressors hummed, their energies clawing at him like invisible chains. Wade screamed, not in pain, but amusement. You're trying to torture me with silence. Akupuchu me with silence. Buddy, I've had roommates quieter than this. Vox slammed her hand onto the console. Enough. You are a wound in the Emperor's design, a mockery of form and sanity. If you are not demon, what are you? Wade tilted his head, the light from the purity lamps painting his scarred face in gold and shadow. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try us. I'm a joke, he said simply. You punchline that got lost between universes. Someone somewhere thought it would be funny if I couldn't die. And now I'm here, ruining your whole grimdark mood. No one spoke. Even the servitors halted mid-motion, processors caught in recursive confusion. Dragar studied him with a gaze that had unmanned planetary governors. You speak of your immortality lightly. Wouldn't you, if it got boring after the first 1,000 deaths? Wade's tone dipped, a rare moment of honesty cutting through the madness. A pain stops meaning anything after a while. It's just noise. Dragar's expression didn't change, but the faintest flicker of uncertainty crossed his mind. The warp energies surrounding the prisoner were not hostile. They were chaotic in nature, yes, but not aligned to any of the 4. They shimmered like oil on water, reflecting everything and belonging to nothing. Then came the sound, a low hum that wasn't mechanical. The lights flickered. The chamber's temperature plunged. Vox froze. "Lord, do you hear that?" Wade looked up, eyes wide behind the mask. They're back." The air thickened into invisible pressure. 1,000 whispers layered upon one another, words in no language mortals could speak. The Grey Knights activated their psychic wards, but the voices were already here. 4 presences vast and impossible. The Chaos Gods had found their toy. Khorne's growl came first, deep and volcanic. "This one bleeds but does not die. He mocks battle itself." Tzeentch's laughter followed like a page turning in a burning book. He is a contradiction given form. His chaos serves no plan, and thus all plans. Nurgle's voice oozed with affection. "He suffers yet smiles. How sweet this infection of absurdity." Slaanesh whispered, every word a caress and a blade. "He feels everything and nothing." A symphony of broken pleasure. The tribunal convulsed as the psychic onslaught tore through reality. Vox fell to her knees, blood leaking from her nose. Draeger shouted prayers, his voice trembling. "Begone abominations," but Wade only sat still, head tilted, listening. "You guys sound like my old group chat." The psychic field shattered. A wave of cold laughter echoed through the ship. Monitors exploded, runes cracked, and the astropathic choir screamed as their minds were flayed open by visions. The warp itself pulsed around the prisoner like a living thing. When silence returned, Draeger stood amid smoke and ruin, his augmetic eye flickering. Wade looked at him, still smiling faintly. "I told you. I attract the wrong kind of attention." Guards moved in, weapons raised. Draeger lifted a trembling hand to halt them. "Oh no, he is more than a heretech." His voice dropped to a whisper of dread. "He is a mirror. A reflection the gods themselves cannot comprehend." Wade yawned. "Yeah, I get that a lot." The Inquisitor leaned close, eyes dark as the void. "Then may the Emperor forgive us all, for what must be done." Outside, in the silent corridors of the ship, the Emperor's statues wept rust, and deep within the warp, 4 gods began to argue over who would claim the mortal fool who dared laugh in their presence. The warp bled through the seams of the ship like ink through paper. The Sanctum Obsidian, once a fortress of the Ordo Malleus, now drifted half-real, its machine spirits wailing as if flayed by unseen claws. Within the containment sanctum, Wade sat chained but unbroken, his head tilted toward the ceiling as though listening to a song only he could hear. The inquisitorial crew whispered of voices leaking through the bulkheads, laughter, cries, and the faint murmuring of impossible beings. Vox had forbidden all unsanctioned personnel from approaching the prisoner, yet still, every night, someone went missing. The warp's presence was unmistakable. Scripture burned black. Servo skulls whispered profane riddles. The Geller field pulsed erratically, like a heart under strain. Draeger had locked himself in his sanctum to commune with the Emperor, yet even his prayers returned hollow, like echoes cast into an infinite chasm. The Emperor was silent, and in that silence something else spoke. It began with a dream. Wade awoke, if awaker meant anything in that timeless space, standing in a field of red ash beneath a sky that pulsed like a wounded eye. His chains were gone. The air tasted of iron and laughter. 4 thrones loomed in the distance, massive, divine, and terrible. From each, a presence pressed against his mind, curious, predatory, fascinated. "We meet at last," rumbled a voice that shook the bones of the world. The sky darkened and rivers of boiling blood rolled at his feet. From that sea rose a figure of brass and rage, Khorne, the blood god, his crown of skulls glinting in the crimson gloom. "You are no warrior fit for my halls, mortal, yet you defy death itself. Tell me, what drives your slaughter if not honor or hatred?" Wade looked down at his own reflection in the blood, saw 1,000 faces stitched together by pain and memory. "Honestly, boredom." Khorne's snarl cracked the ground. "Then I shall teach you purpose through war." Wade shrugged. "Sure, but I'm warning you, I've fought gods before. Usually ends with me winning by accident." A shadow swept over him, feathers of blue and gold unfolding like the pages of a book written in flame. Tzeentch emerged, his eyes shifting with every thought. "Fascinating specimen," he mused. "You walk outside the script of destiny. No thread binds you, no pattern claims you. Even I cannot read your end." Wade grinned. "I guess I'm more of a freestyle kind of guy." Tzeentch extended a clawed hand, fingers composed of living runes. "Serve me and I will grant you what no god can, knowledge of who you truly are beneath the madness." Attempting, Wade said, crossing his arms. "But if I start making sense, I'll ruin the brand." The air thickened, heavy with decay. From behind him came the stench of rot and sweetness of flowers blooming from corpses. Nurgle appeared as a shape vast and kind, his smile carved in shadow and filth. "Poor child," he crooned, his voice wet and tender. "You have suffered so long, alone, unending. Let grandfather embrace you. You. Lay down your burden and be still." For a moment Wade almost faltered. The god's voice was not cruel. It was comfort itself, a promise of peace through surrender. He felt warmth spread across his chest, a sickly, gentle light that made his endless pain seem small. "You sound like someone I could have used a long time ago." "Then let go," Nurgle whispered. "Join my garden and your scars shall bloom eternal." Wade hesitated, then shook his head. "Sorry, big guy, I've already got commitment issues." The warmth faded, replaced by laughter, not his, but hers. From behind, a voice purred through the air, soft as silk over glass. "He rejects you all because he is mine." The words shimmered with pleasure and poison. Slaanesh stepped forth, beauty so perfect it became monstrous. Their every motion was music, every syllable a caress. Look at him, a creature of pain who finds joy in it, a mortal so fractured that even despair delights him. "You are the song I never wrote." Wade tilted his head. "You know, you sound like every ex I've ever had." Slaanesh smiled. "Then you know how it ends." The ground fractured, the gods' realms overlapping in chaos, blood and feathers, rot and silk twisting around him like a storm of nightmares. Wade stood at its center, arms out, laughing into the madness. "You guys ever think maybe I'm not the crazy one here?" The laughter echoed through eternity, and for the first time in ages, the chaos gods fell silent. Here was something they had never encountered, a mortal who belonged to none of them, who embraced insanity without devotion, who mocked the warp's very essence. He was their reflection and their blasphemy, the embodiment of freedom within a cosmos built on chains. Khorne snarled. "You will kneel." Tzeentch whispered. "You will learn." Nurgle sighed. "You will love." Slaanesh smiled. "You will feel." Wade raised a finger. "Or, hear me out, I'll just do me. Or, hear me out, I'll just do me." A shockwave of laughter erupted from him, tearing through the realms like a sonic blade. The ground split, the skies convulsed, and even the thrones shuddered. The laughter carried no malice, no fear, only absurd defiance. It was a sound that didn't belong in the warp, a noise that unmade meaning itself. When he opened his eyes again, he was back in his cell. The walls trembled. His chains smoked. Interrogator Vox stood outside, pale, clutching her rosarius. "What have you done?" she whispered. Wade smiled faintly. "He made some new friends." Outside the ship, the warp churned. The laughter had not stopped. It had only changed pitch. Somewhere deep within that infinite storm, the four gods conferred in uneasy unity, each whispering the same words in their own tongue of madness. He should not exist. The ship drifted through the void like a coffin carried by unseen hands. The Sanctum Obsidian's Geller field pulsed erratically, unable to hold steady against the turbulence of the warp. Astropaths screamed in silence, their minds burning with fractured visions of a laughing man dancing between gods. Even the Grey Knights aboard could feel it, that mocking mirth echoing through their armor, eroding faith with every beat. Wade sat in his cell, staring at the reflection of his mask in a shard of broken glass. The voices had quieted for now, but the silence was worse. He knew what was coming, he could feel it. The air trembled and the walls began to sweat with light. The warp peeled open again, not like a door, but like the slow, tearing grin of a lunatic cosmos. Four presences filled the void around him, pressing down upon his mind like mountains made of thought. This time they did not speak through dreams. They came as visions, standing around him, colossal, shimmering shapes that bent reality just by existing. Khorne towered first, his former cathedral of bone and brass. Each heartbeat was a drumbeat of war. The air reeked of blood and iron. "You have mocked me, mortal," he said, voice shaking the deck. "But even mockery bears power. I offer you my gift, the rage unending. Take it, and your every strike shall echo through eternity. No wound shall halt you, no foe shall outlast your fury." The air around Wade rippled as a crimson aura licked across his skin. He felt power surge in his veins, raw, pure, intoxicating. He could almost hear the screaming of 1,000 warriors within him. He clenched his fist and the metal in his chains began to melt. Then as easily as he had drawn breath, he laughed. "Buddy, I've been angry my whole life. It's boring after a while." The aura cracked and vanished, burning away like smoke. Khorne recoiled, not in fear but confusion. "You reject my wrath?" "Yeah," Wade said. "Your whole brand feels a little one note. You ever tried therapy?" Before Korn could respond, the light changed, shifting from crimson to blue, the air filled with a scent of old parchment and the sound of whispering pages. Tzeentch appeared, his form a constantly rearranging fractal, a living storm of eyes and fire. You waste your rage, yet see the beauty in chaos. You crave meaning behind madness, though you deny it. Accept my gift, and I will grant you the truth behind every lie, knowledge so infinite it will rewrite your mind into a masterpiece of comprehension. Tzeentch reached out, 1,000 eyes glimmering like dying suns. Wade felt the edges of his mind pull toward that promise. He saw flashes, worlds collapsing, timelines folding, the Emperor's secret past, the first lie ever told. He could know everything. He exhaled slowly, smiled beneath the mask, and said, "A pass." "I've seen what happens when I Google myself too much." The light flickered. For a heartbeat, the architect of fate was silent. No mortal had ever refused him without trembling. The god's laughter echoed faintly, but it was uncertain, like the sound of glass cracking under its own weight. Then came the stench. Sweet and vile, flies buzzed through the air. Flowers bloomed from rust and rot. The cell's cold metal softened, pulsing with diseased life. Nurgle's hand emerged first, a vast, gentle thing dripping with pus and light. "Poor little wanderer," he said, voice warm and sad. "They hurt you and left you broken, and yet you laugh. You are already my child, though you do not know it. Accept my blessing and all pain shall become peace. You will be loved endlessly, unconditionally." For a long moment, Wade didn't speak. He felt warmth spread through him. Not power, not knowledge, but something disturbingly close to comfort. His heart slowed, his mind softened. He saw 1,000 infected gardens blooming across dying worlds, all of them peaceful, no pain, no loneliness. And then he whispered, "I'd rather feel something even if it hurts." The garden shriveled to ash. Nurgle's sigh rolled through the void, equal parts sorrow and pride. "Then you are truly lost, child. Even I cannot heal you." The cell dimmed to darkness. Only the sound of breathing, his ragged, unsure. Then came the final voice, Slaanesh. It entered like music made of sin. Every wall seemed to breathe. The air pulsed with scent, sweet wine, burnt incense, and the warmth of skin. From the darkness came a figure neither male nor female, perfect beyond comprehension. Every glance felt like an invitation, every word like a kiss edged with blades. "They offered you rage, truth, and comfort," Slaanesh said softly, "but I offer you yourself. All that you repress, every lust, every fear, every craving you mock, I will make it divine. You will laugh and cry in the same breath. You will be whole." The figure touched his cheek, and for a moment Wade felt it. Clarity. The chaos within him quieted. His mind, always fractured, almost felt aligned. He looked into the god's eyes and whispered, "You're beautiful." Slaanesh smiled. "And you are infinite." He paused, almost trembling, then sighed, "Yeah, but I like being imperfect." The illusion shattered. The cell collapsed back into cold metal. The gods recoiled, their gifts rejected, their voices vanishing like thunder swallowed by the void. Wade slumped against the wall, smoke rising from his armor, heartbeat steady but hollow. "I guess that's a no from me, demons." Across the warp, the four gods stirred in agitation. Never before had a mortal refused them all. Not from faith, not from fear, but from apathy. His soul remained his own, unclaimed, uncorrupted, and utterly incomprehensible. In the golden quiet of the throne, the Emperor's psychic presence flickered. Just once, like a candle fighting darkness. Somewhere, buried beneath eons of silence, a single thought passed through what remained of his mind. What manner of soul defies eternity with laughter? And far below in his cell, Wade Wilson grinned into the dark. "I guess that's me, your holiness." The warp tore again, not as a whisper, but as a roar. One instant Wade sat slumped in his cell aboard the Sanctum Obsidian. The next, the world exploded into heat and iron. The ship, the metal walls, the cold lights, all of it vanished into red. He stood on scorched stone beneath a sky of smoke and molten brass. Towers of bone reached for the burning heavens. Rivers of blood stretched to the horizon, carrying skulls like driftwood. And above it all, seated upon a mountain of corpses, loomed Korn, the blood god. The god's laughter rumbled through the air like cannon fire. "You mock the gods, yet you crave battle. So fight." A legion of demons roared from the chasms, blood letters in ranks, axes blazing with warp fire, eyes alight with eternal hate, alight with eternal hate. Chains erupted from the ground, lashing around Wade's limbs, dragging him to the arena's center. A jagged sword materialized in his hand, its blade black and wet. The crowd, a million demons howling from the cliffs, demanded blood. Wade looked around, flexed his neck and sighed. "You know, I was hoping for a spa day." The first demon charged. Wade barely had time to move before it slammed into him, its axe slicing through his chest. Blood sprayed, bones cracked, but before it could roar in triumph, Wade laughed. His chest sealed shut as the wound healed instantly. With that tickled, he swung the sword clumsily, hacking through the demon's neck. The creature's head rolled across the arena floor, still screaming. The crowd erupted in joy. Khorne's voice thundered across the realm. Again, more demons poured forward. Wade ducked, spun, stabbed. The sword whistled like a song written in pain. He was no warrior by the standards of this world, but he was relentless, and more importantly, amused. He killed, died, resurrected, killed again. A bloodthirster's whip flayed him to bone. He reformed midair, laughing through the agony. The more they tore him apart, the louder he laughed. Hours, or eternities, passed in slaughter. The arena floor drowned in gore. Wade moved like a red blur through the carnage, singing tunelessly as he fought. The demons began to hesitate. His joy was infectious in a way that terrified them. He was not a warrior seeking victory. He was chaos made flesh, not the god's kind, but his own. Khorne leaned forward on his throne, eyes blazing. Enough. The demons froze. Wade stood panting in the silence, the sword dripping with blood that wasn't his. His suit was shredded, his body torn and whole at once. He looked up at the blood god towering above him. A fun crowd. Do I get a medal or just trauma? Khorne rose. The weight of his presence crushed the air. Every demon bowed, every flame dimmed. You are cursed with a hunger for battle, yet no glory fills you. Why fight if not to win? Wade shrugged. Because losing's boring and winning's predictable. I fight because it's loud. Khorne studied him, the god of war, confounded by the absence of purpose. You are an insult to the sanctity of battle. Sanctity of battle, the sanctity of Wade laughed. You're sitting on a skull mountain, buddy. Not exactly the Vatican, the blood god roared, shaking the realm. Rivers boiled, mountains shattered. Wade staggered under the pressure, bones breaking, body flayed by pure sound. Yet even then, even as his body dissolved into red mist, he whispered, "You can't scare me. I've met worse bosses." Khorne's fist closed, and Wade exploded into dust. The god turned away, dismissing him. Let the fool be unmade. But the dust began to move. Slowly, impossibly, it gathered again, bone knitting, sinew forming, flesh sealing. Wade rose from his own ashes, laughing through the pain. "Oh man, I love respawn." For the first time in eons, silence fell over the brass citadel. Khorne's warriors watched, their faith trembling. Even in this realm, no creature had ever returned from such obliteration. Wade dusted himself off and looked up at the god of slaughter. "You keep trying to end me," he said softly, "but I don't end." Khorne's eyes burned brighter. "Then you are no mortal. You are blasphemy incarnate." "Probably," Wade replied. "But hey, blasphemy's just creativity with better marketing." The god rose to full height, his wrath bleeding into the air. "You will learn reverence through eternity of combat." Wade looked up, blood dripping down his chin, and smiled. "You don't get it, do you? Eternity's my thing." For the first time, Khorne hesitated. He had faced countless champions, countless fools who believed themselves invincible. But this one, this absurd mortal, had no fear, no desire, no purpose. His madness was not rebellion, it was existence. Khorne turned away, his massive form vanishing into fire. "Begone from my realm. You are no warrior. You are a plague." The ground split beneath Wade's feet. The arena dissolved into smoke. He fell through crimson light, tumbling through the warp once more, laughing until the sound broke the air itself. When he landed, it was in shadow, wet, heavy, and filled with a faint scent of rot. He looked around at the decaying vines, the dripping trees, the endless green mist. Flies buzzed, flowers pulsed like open wounds. He groaned, brushing blood from his mask. A grate, from a barbecue pit to a compost heap. What's next? The existential spa package. And somewhere in the mist, something vast and gentle laughed. "Welcome, little wanderer," came Nurgle's voice, warm as death. "Welcome to the garden." The air was thick and heavy, every breath a mixture of sweetness and rot. The ground pulsed under Wade's boots like living flesh, soft and damp, weeping a greenish ichor with each step. Around him stretched a horizon of decay, trees made of bone, their leaves translucent and wet with pus, rivers that shimmered with disease, reflecting a sickly gold beneath a green sky. The scent was overpowering, yet oddly comforting, like the air after rain on a graveyard. He turned slowly, taking it all in. So, this is Hell's botanical garden, huh? Laughter echoed deep, resonant, strangely tender. The mist before him parted, and out of it came shapes that might once have been human. Plague-bearers waddled through the muck, their bellies splitting with each step, entrails glistening like ropes of wet pearls. Yet they smiled in their own grotesque way. One of them bowed clumsily, pus dripping from its torn lip. "A grandfather welcomes you," it croaked. "Oh, nice. Finally someone with manners." Wade looked around, waving at the others. "Any chance you've got a shower around here? Or a bar? Preferably both." The plague-bearer simply gestured forward with a dripping hand. From the mists emerged the shadow of something enormous, a mountain that moved, breathed, and smiled. Nurgle. His laughter rolled through the garden, shaking the sky. The god's form was both monstrous and paternal, his bulk filled with life that should not exist, flies, spores, tendrils, all moving as one living symphony of decay. "Child of laughter and ruin," Nurgle said, his tone warm and strange. "You have come to my garden uninvited, yet I am pleased. For in you I see a mirror of my children's joy." Wade crossed his arms, looking up at the god's vast, smiling face. "You know, for a guy covered in boils, you've got great energy. Very grandpa after 2 cups of tea vibes." The air hummed. "I am no tyrant of rage, nor liar of change," Nurgle said. "I am life's final embrace. In me, all wounds find peace, all suffering finds purpose. You have suffered more than any soul should bear, little fool. Let it end here. Let rot be your rest." Wade's smile faltered. The ground beneath him rippled, softening like warm flesh. He saw faces in the soil, peaceful, content, their eyes closed in eternal sleep. Flowers grew from their mouths. None screamed. None struggled. "You mean give up?" he asked quietly. Nurgle chuckled, a sound like thunder muffled by moss. "Not give up. Give in. You seek no glory, no knowledge, no pleasure. You only endure. Let my gift take that burden. Let death and life become one within you." For a moment Wade said nothing. He stared at the garden, the colors, the gentle hum, the way even decay here seemed alive. He felt the warmth seeping into his bones, a strange comfort filling the void that had always lived inside him. For once, the voices in his head fell silent. He could stay. He could stop. He could rest. He could rest. Then a fly landed on his shoulder, its voice small but distinct, whispering directly into his ear. "But if you rest, who will laugh?" Wade blinked. Slowly his grin returned. "A nice try, Bugman. You almost had me." He stepped forward and pressed a gloved hand against the soft, quivering ground. The soil responded instantly, tendrils rising to caress his wrist. Nurgle's laughter softened. "You would deny peace, even now." "A peace sounds great," Wade said. "But I'm a bad guest. I ruin dinner parties." He drew his hand back and the ground recoiled. "If I stopped moving, I'd be bored to death, literally." A pause. Then for the first time in millennia, the god of decay sighed, not in anger but in something like melancholy. "Then you are truly alone, Wade Wilson. Even I cannot love what refuses love." "Yeah," Wade said softly, staring at his reflection in a puddle of green water. His face looked different here, younger, unscarred. The man he might have been if life had been kind. "That's kind of my superpower." The illusion shattered. The garden darkened, the air souring. The laughter of the plague-bearers turned to groans. Nurgle's shadow loomed vast, filling the sky. "Then go, my lost child. You bring neither growth nor peace. You are the rot that will not root." The ground split beneath Wade's feet again, spilling him into the darkness below. The smell of decay gave way to the scent of burning parchment and ozone. He tumbled through layers of color, blue, gold, violet, each one shimmering with impossible symbols. He landed on cold glass. The world around him reassembled itself into a labyrinth, corridors of light twisting upon themselves, staircases that led both up and down, mirrors reflecting futures that never were. The air pulsed with thought, and laughter whispered from everywhere at once, sly, intelligent, cruel. Wade rubbed his head, groaning. "Oh great! From mushrooms and mucus to IKEA infinite nightmare section. 1,000 eyes opened in the walls. Books fluttered by, whispering secrets as they dissolved into sparks. A figure stepped forward, draped in ever-changing robes that glimmered with every color and none. Its face was a shifting mask, its smile the curve of inevitability. Tizench spoke, his voice like fire learning to sing. "Welcome to the crystal maze, mortal. Let us see how long your mind lasts before it eats itself." Wade sighed, straightened his mask, and cracked his neck. "Buddy, that ship sailed about 3 movies ago." And as the laughter of the architect of fate filled the air, the maze around him began to move. The labyrinth breathed. Labyrinth breathed. Walls of translucent crystal pulsed with veins of blue fire, reshaping themselves with every blink. Corridors shifted like thoughts, their paths folding inward, looping upon themselves, erasing direction and time. Every surface mirrored Wade's reflection, not once, but infinitely. Thousands of him stared back from the glass, each slightly different. One smiling, one broken, one still bleeding from battles that never were. He took a slow step forward, boots clicking on the mirrored floor. Okay, cool light show. 0 stars for hospitality. From above came laughter that wasn't human. It rippled through the maze like silk aflame. You mock because you fear, little fool, Tizenchi's voice purred, echoing from everywhere and nowhere. Every joke is a shield, every laugh a wound you refuse to feel. Wade stopped, his reflection still grinning. You're not wrong, he said softly, but I prefer my therapy without the omniscient commentary. The god's laughter deepened, weaving through the corridors like a storm of whispers. Then let us begin the game. Each step a truth, each truth a cut. Find the heart of my maze, and I may grant you understanding. The floor beneath him flared with light, and the world fragmented. He stood suddenly in a different place, a city under an orange sky, its towers cracked and burning. Soldiers in armor he recognized, vaguely human, fought and died in endless waves. He saw himself among them, masked and weary, his blades coated in blood. What the? A hand touched his shoulder. He turned and stared into his own face, unscarred, unbroken. The other him smiled, calm, noble. You could have been a hero here, it said. A savior. You had the skill, the heart, even the will. You chose chaos instead. Wade stepped back. Heroes die early. I just skipped the line, the copy tilted its head. Or maybe you were too afraid to matter, the world cracked. The image dissolved into blue fire, and Wade found himself back in the maze, breath quickened. Okay, he muttered, a note to self. Hallucinations are getting better production value. The walls twisted again, rearranging into a cathedral made of glass. Inside, he saw memories, fragments of a life long buried, the woman who had loved him, the world he'd lost, the deaths that had followed. He reached out to touch one of the panes, and it rippled beneath his fingers, pulling him in. Now he stood in a small apartment. It smelled of rain and old pizza and order. On the couch sat Vanessa, alive, smiling. She looked up from a worn paperback and said, "You can still come home, Wade. You can stop fighting. You can stop pretending you're fine." His throat tightened. "You're not real." "Neither are you," she said gently. "You keep dying and coming back but never living. Even gods pity that kind of immortality." He turned away, covering his face. Don't do this." She rose, crossed the room, and touched his cheek. Her hand was warm. Let them help you. Let someone help you. Let someone help you." Tizenchi's voice whispered behind her like a serpent. "Accept my gift. Knowledge will end your pain. I can teach you to control what you are, to reshape your curse into power." Wade met her eyes, kind, pleading, perfect, and stepped back. "If I start believing lies again," he said, "I'll forget how to laugh." The apartment shattered into shards of light. Each shard fell upward, becoming stars in the false sky. He was back in the maze, breathing hard. The laughter of Tizench rolled like thunder, rolled like thunder. "You reject truth, love, and purpose alike. Then what remains of you?" He looked up into the swirling void and for the first time didn't smile. "I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe that's the point." The maze convulsed, the walls melting into streams of liquid light. The Tizenchi's form emerged, vast, many-eyed, crowned with fire. "Then you are mine, fool, for nothing is the raw clay of creation." Wade laughed weakly. "Yeah, but you'd get bored fast. I changed too much for even you to predict." For an instant, every one of Tizenchi's eyes opened wide. The flames flickered, the god's laughter stuttered. "Impossible. Try me," Wade said. "Even I don't know what I'll do next." The maze screamed. Its geometry collapsed inward, swallowing itself in spirals of blue and violet. Wade fell weightless through collapsing illusions, through memories of lives he never lived, victories he never earned, and deaths he'd already forgotten. When he struck ground again, it was soft, not glass, not ash, but velvet. The air pulsed with slow music, a rhythm that seemed to breathe through his skin. Around him stretched an endless palace of mirrors and light, walls of living crystal pulsing to an invisible melody. The scent was intoxicating. Wine, sweat, desire. Shadows danced across the polished floors, shaped like lovers and angels and monsters, all intertwined. Wade looked around, catching his breath. So this is what happens when a nightclub eats a cathedral. A voice coiled around him, rich and terrible, every syllable a promise. "You have walked through fury, rot, and deceit," it said. "Now come to me, Wade Wilson, the place where pain becomes art." He turned slowly as Slaanesh appeared, radiant and terrible, eyes the color of dying suns. Their smile could have made a saint kneel or a god weep. "Welcome," the god whispered, "to the palace of perfect agony." And for the first time in all his journey, Wade Wilson could not think of a single joke. The chamber pulsed with living light. Every surface, the marble, the mirrors, the very air, glowed in time with Wade's heartbeat, sinking to a rhythm older than thought. The sound was beautiful, intoxicating, and wrong. It was music shaped from agony, pleasure carved into harmony, and in its melody every scream found a home. Slaanesh stepped closer, the motion like poetry written in flesh. They were both terrible and divine, a face forever shifting between beauty and horror. Their voice came not from their lips, but from everywhere, each syllable caressing the walls. "You hide your pain behind mockery, little wanderer. But here, your laughter will be stripped bare, your heart made art." Wade stood still, mask cracked, eyes reflecting the soft radiance. "You've got a weird idea of therapy," he muttered, though his voice sounded smaller than usual. Slaanesh smiled, an expression of impossible allure and cruelty. "You have denied the gifts of all who came before me, rage, rot, and revelation. You call yourself unbound, yet you are still a slave. A slave to what? To your own mask." The words hit harder than he expected. The air thickened. The scent of wine and blood grew heavy enough to taste. Slaanesh lifted a hand and reality obeyed. Around them scenes began to form, reflections of Wade's soul. He saw himself in another life, a man desperate to be loved, standing before Vanessa, his face unscarred, his eyes alive. He saw the laughter he used to wield like a weapon, the humor that made others love him even as it buried his own pain. Then he saw it curdle, the cancer, the experiments, the endless dying and returning. Each frame painted in exquisite detail, each agony rendered as art. Slaanesh's voice wrapped around him like silk. "You do not fear death, Wade Wilson. You fear being seen." He turned sharply. "That's not true." The mirrors trembled, 1,000 reflections of him laughing, all cracked in the same way, all cracked in the same way. "Isn't it?" each echo said. Slaanesh approached until their face was inches from his. "I could give you truth," they whispered. "I could strip away the lies, the pain, the laughter. I could make you whole, a masterpiece of sensation, forever adored, never forgotten." Wade stared at them, feeling something twist deep in his chest. "You mean you'd turn me into you? Is that so terrible?" He looked at the vision still swirling in the glass, a life of endless pleasure, eternal attention, never needing to hide again. For a heartbeat he was tempted, to be known, to be loved, to stop pretending. Then he exhaled slowly. "You know what your problem is?" Slaanesh tilted their head, a predator amused. "You think pain and beauty are opposites, but they're just noise. You're addicted to the noise. Me? I like the silence between the screams." Their smile faltered. The music in the air trembled, notes bending out of tune. Wade stepped back. "A thanks for the offer, shiny, but I'm not your canvas. I'm the paint." The god's eyes darkened like suns collapsing. "You dare reject me, but don't take it personally. I reject everyone. It's my thing. It's my thing." Slaanesh's beauty fractured into horror, their form expanding, splitting into shapes no mortal could name. Then feel everything. The palace erupted in sensation. The walls bled light, the floors screamed. Every nerve in Wade's body ignited. Pain, pleasure, sorrow, ecstasy, until he couldn't tell one from the other. He fell to his knees, gasping, laughing, weeping all at once. His vision blurred, his mind burned, and for a moment he felt himself dissolve into the music of the god. Then, from somewhere deep within him, a different sound rose, his own laughter. Not mocking, not mad, just human. A sound that didn't belong here. It broke the rhythm. It broke the rhythm. It broke them. The music stopped. The palace froze. Slaanesh stared down at him, eyes wide, and whispered, "What are you?" Wade stood slowly, every breath a knife, every heartbeat defiance. "I'm the punchline you can't understand." The glass around them shattered, and with it the illusion of perfection. Slaanesh screamed, a sound that made galaxies tremble, and the palace collapsed inward, devouring itself in a spiral of violet flame. When the light faded, Wade stood alone in the void. The echo of his own laughter lingered, softer now, almost sad, now almost sad. Then from somewhere far beyond, a chorus of other voices began to murmur, four at once, bickering like angry gods denied their prize. He looked up into the darkness and sighed. "Oh, good. Family meeting." The warp trembled, the throne stirred. And for the first time since the birth of chaos, the four gods gathered in the same breath, not to fight, but to decide what to do with the mortal who had refused them all. The air thickened with power. A world began to form around him, half light, half shadow, held together only by tension. And in the center of it, a throne built of contradictions awaited. Wade adjusted his mask, stretched his neck, and muttered, "This better not be another intervention." The void between realities trembled as the thrones of the four great powers materialized, each casting its own impossible light. Khorne's citadel of brass burned red and black, chains clashing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Nurgle's garden pulsed with fetid life, its air thick with spores and sorrow. Timsa's crystalline spire shimmered in colors unnamed, constantly rewriting itself. And Slaanesh's shattered palace glowed faintly violet, still bleeding beauty from its wounds. Between them, suspended on nothing, stood Wade Wilson, the mortal anomaly who had survived what no mind should. He looked up at the assembled deities and folded his arms. "So what's this? A cosmic performance review?" Khorne's snarl shook the void. "Silence, worm. You mock creation itself." "A guilty," Wade said cheerfully. "Also, you could use a breath mint." Slaanesh lounged upon their fractured throne, smiling faintly. "He amuses me still, even after rejection. That alone is rare." Finch's voice slithered through the air like burning parchment. "He is not amusement. He is an equation unbalanced. His existence rewrites causality. I have traced every possible outcome of his being and none conclude." Nurgle chuckled softly, a sound like mud stirring beneath rain. "Oh, let him be. Even rot needs laughter now and then." Khorne rose from his throne, the movement like a tectonic shift. He denies rage to miss purpose. He mocks battle with jest. Such insolence cannot be tolerated. "You say that," Wade replied, "but I'm still here. Kinda feels like you're just jealous I don't need therapy to be this unhinged." The gods' presence grew heavier. Their air thickened until reality strained under their combined will. Each of them, beings that could destroy galaxies by thought, turned their attention on one tiny blood-smeared man. Slaanesh leaned forward, eyes glimmering with curiosity. "Tell us then, fool of men. What are you? No demon, no saint, no god, no mortal. How do you endure what even eternity cannot digest?" Wade tilted his head. "Because I don't take any of this seriously." The laughter that followed was not mortal. Tizenchi's flames flickered violently. "Meaningless answer. Exactly," Wade said. "That's the secret. You guys build entire universes out of meaning. Rage, decay, change, sensation. Me? I'm a walking bad joke. You can't control what doesn't care." Khorne roared, stepping forward, the chains on his armor screaming. "Every soul cares. About victory, about life, about something. Not me. Not me." Wade's voice had gone quieter now, almost calm. "I've lost everything so many times that meaning stopped meaning anything. That's the joke, don't you get it? You can't corrupt someone who's already laughing at his own misery." Even Slaanesh hesitated, the divine smile faltering. For the first time since the dawn of chaos, the four gods looked at one another, and for a single terrifying instant they agreed on something. He must not exist. The words echoed as one voice layered with infinite power. The warp shuddered, its foundations cracking like glass. The gods raised their hands, talons, claws, tendrils, and radiance merging into one annihilating storm. Wade looked up at the swirling apocalypse gathering above him and muttered, "I guess that's a no on the group hug." The blast struck. A light without color consumed everything. Galaxies collapsed into equations, stars melted into sound. Wade's body disintegrated, his atoms scattered across eternity. The gods watched as the last trace of him vanished into the screaming void. Then the laughter began. It started faintly, a single chuckle echoing from the ashes of reality. Then another, louder, rolling across the warp like thunder made of mockery. The laughter built and built until even the chaos gods felt it vibrating through their thrones. From the center of the annihilation, something stirred. A shape rose from the ruin. Not divine, not mortal, but something between. The laughter had form now, a body woven of contradictions, fragments of every joke, every scream, every death that Wade had ever lived. His mask hung half-formed, his eyes glowing with colorless fire. Tenchi's voice trembled. "Impossible. He has no soul to anchor such power." Khorne's rage faltered into confusion. "He survives our judgment," Slaanesh whispered, almost reverent. "No, he transcends it." Nurgle laughed, slow and booming. "Oh, I knew it. Look at him, joy made flesh. Disease of laughter." "Beautiful." The being floated above them, weightless, radiant with absurdity. When it spoke, its voice was both Wade's and not. "You try to end the joke," it said. "But I am the joke. The one that never ends." The gods recoiled as the warp itself rippled, bending toward him like a living audience. Across 1,000 realities, mortals and demons alike began to feel something new. Not devotion, not fear, but mirth. Uncontrollable, delirious laughter that slipped into the prayers of the dying and the curses of the damned. Wade tilted his head and smiled, not cruelly but kindly, as if forgiving the entire universe for taking itself too seriously. Don't worry, he said softly. I'm not here to destroy you. Funny, I'm here to make sure none of you ever forget the punchline. The light burst outward again, not as fire but as laughter turned into reality. The thrones cracked. The void rippled, and somewhere deep within the material galaxy, Psychers awoke screaming, not in terror but in hysterics. For a single, impossible moment, the warp echoed with something it had never known before, joy, and amid that laughter, something vast and new began to stir. A fifth throne, empty, waiting, and the gods realized with dawning horror that they had not destroyed Deadpool, they had created him anew. A god born of irony, a being of contradiction, the immortal fool. The laughter faded into the stillness of the void, and far away, on a forgotten world where stars flickered dimly through polluted clouds, a red-masked figure opened his eyes, brushed dust from his shoulder, and muttered, "I knew I'd stick the landing." The warp itself convulsed. What had once been infinite madness now rippled like liquid glass, its color bleeding out, its laws bending towards something new. From the fractured heart of the Imperium rose a light unlike any that had ever existed there. Not holy, not unholy, but ridiculous. It shimmered with contradiction, each wave of it whispering nonsense that somehow made perfect sense. The laughter that had begun as a ripple now rolled across eternity, filling the very marrow of creation. Khorne's throne cracked under the sound. His brass citadel trembled, rivers of blood boiling into steam. He roared a sound that could have ended worlds, but even his fury faltered as the laughter refused to die. "What is this mockery?" he thundered, clutching his chain axe so tightly the metal screamed. Dean stood in the glow, eyes blazing in 1,000 directions at once, every face shifting through confusion. This was not foreseen, he hissed. No pattern accounts for such chaos. He embodies uncertainty itself, yet refuses to obey even that. Slaanesh reclined upon their throne of glass and silk, lips curved in both fascination and dread. "Ye can feel him," they murmured. Every thrill, every ache, every humiliation, all woven into joy. He has taken agony and made it funny. How obscene, how divine, how divine. Only Nurgle laughed, his rotted belly shaking with delight. "O my children," he wheezed, his voice thick with affection. "You feared him, but I see beauty. Life is a joke, is it not? All rot, all renewal after that follows decay. He is hope in its most revolting form." At the center of their argument, the light condensed. From that luminous absurdity, a figure took shape. Neither mortal nor demon, neither hero nor heretic. He wore the crimson suit of the mercenary, though it gleamed now with threads of living warp light, stitched together by impossible paradox. His mask was torn, revealing a smile that wasn't smug but cosmic. Behind his eyes burned not fire, but amusement deep enough to frighten gods. "Atada," Wade Wilson said. His voice was everywhere at once, echoing through demon worlds, whispered in the dreams of saints, muttered by madmen and on oracles alike. "You guys ever stop and think how seriously you take yourselves? All this doom, all this destiny, you've got galaxies drowning in misery just to feed your egos. Maybe it's time someone laughed with you instead of because of you." Slaanesh leaned forward, eyes glinting like twin suns. "You mock us in our own realm?" "Not mock," Wade said. "Satirize. There's a difference. You guys are the universe's biggest punchline. I'm just the guy pointing it out." Khorne stepped forward, each movement cracking space itself. "You dare speak so before gods?" Wade shrugged. "You say that like being a god's heart. You'll just picked a mood and stuck with it." The blood god's axe came down, splitting the air. The blow could have unmade continents, but the weapon struck something invisible and stopped. Hanging in the air before Wade was not a shield, but a gesture, a single raised finger. Khorne's strength faltered, the axe dissolving into laughter that sounded eerily like his own. Teasant watched in awe and fury. He turns cause into effect. The act of destruction becomes its own undoing. Wade turned toward him. "You talk too much, Feathers." He flicked his wrist, and the words themselves turned into birds, flapping away through the warp before Teasant could reclaim them. Nurgle's flies buzzed louder, orbiting Wade like a halo of filth and joy. "Welcome, little god," Nurgle said fondly. "Do you have a name?" Wade tilted his head thoughtfully. "A name, huh? How about Wadius the Unkillable? Natu on the nose, the laughing idiot, the merc with a mouth of madness." He paused. Titles are overrated." The warp stirred around him, reshaping itself in response. Demons, ancient and newborn, began to twist, their forms flickering between horror and hilarity. A bloodletter tried to roar but coughed up confetti instead. A herald of Tizant dissolved into ribbons of nonsense verse. Even a great unclean one looked down, surprised as flowers bloomed from his sores and began to sing. The laughter spread like contagion. Worlds caught echoes of it through the thin veil of reality. On Cadia's ruins, an imperial psyker burst into giggles mid-prayer. In the hives of Necromunda, madmen began painting jokes on the walls in blood. Even on Terra, deep within the Golden Palace, the Emperor's psychic presence twitched, as though for one impossible moment he had heard the joke and almost smiled. The four Chaos Gods looked upon Wade with new understanding and new fear. Khorne growled, "He undermines rage with humor." Tizent whispered, "He makes mockery of meaning itself." Slaanesh hissed, "He turns agony into art unbidden." Nurgle chuckled, "He brings laughter where there should be none." The warp bent low in reverence and confusion. Wade spread his arms. "See? You're welcome. I just democratized chaos. Now everyone gets to laugh." "You have no throne," Tizent said, his many eyes narrowing. "And no dominion." Wade looked around the endless void, grinning. "Exactly. That's the joke. That's the joke." The warp trembled, unsure how to process a being who sought no worship, no conquest, no purpose. And yet his presence grew. The mortals of 1,000 worlds began to whisper prayers they didn't understand. Not words of devotion, but of absurd gratitude. Laughter in despair, humor in horror. Life refusing to make sense, and thriving anyway. In the Imperium something new had been born. A god who made no demands, who offered no reward, who could not be predicted or slain. His realm was nowhere, and therefore everywhere. And as the other gods withdrew, each shaken in their own way, Wade looked at his reflection in the void and murmured, "I guess the joke's on everyone." The echo of his laughter rippled outward, reshaping everything it touched. And the warp itself, for the first time since time began, smiled. The warp was no longer red, nor blue, nor green. It was everything at once. Color became music, time became laughter, and the laughter, oh the laughter, spilled into every crevice of creation. What had once been the domain of agony and prayer now pulsed with contradiction. Demons froze mid-slaughter, unsure whether to scream or grin. Astropaths went blind, not from horror, but from visions of absurdity so vivid they burned through sanity and left only wonder. Reality itself began to lose its seriousness. On the bridge of the Sanctum Obsidian, Interrogator Vox clutched the railing as her vessel drifted through a warp storm that refused to behave. Lightning bolts curved into smile-shaped scars across the void. The Emperor's name echoed through the Vox channels, not as a cry for salvation, but as a punchline. Servitors wept oil that smelled faintly of roasted coffee. A grey knight stared into the gala field and began to giggle uncontrollably before tearing off his helmet, eyes wide with revelation. "He's laughing at us," the knight whispered. "I know he's laughing for us." Vox staggered to her knees, whispering prayers she no longer believed would be heard. "Emperor, protect us. What has he become?" Across the galaxy, the phenomenon spread. In the underhives of Necromunda, workers began painting crude faces on the walls, smiling, bleeding, alive. On Baal, the Blood Angels dreamed of a man in red who told them that sorrow was optional. Even in the Eye of Terror, where nightmares ruled unchallenged, the laughter echoed like the tolling of a cosmic bell. The gods of chaos felt it too. Their realms shuddered under the intrusion. Khorne's river of blood froze mid-flow, each droplet turning into glass that reflected its own ridiculousness, every act of rage mirrored by the futility of anger itself. The blood god struck at his reflection and saw it grin back. For the first time in eternity, his fury faltered. In Tzeentch's realm, entire plans unraveled before completion. Prophecies looped in circles, predicting themselves and then apologizing for the confusion. The architect of fate stared into the endless spiral of his own paradox and hissed, "He rewrites without ink, without intention." Nurgle's garden bloomed uncontrollably. Flowers laughed as they died and resurrected in rhythm. His flies carried spores that whispered jokes instead of prayers. "A beautiful," Nurgle sighed, watching his decay dance. "He brings joy to rot. My garden sings with it." Slaanesh wept beneath their shattered mirrors. Every reflection of beauty now carried imperfection, cracks, scars, laughter lines that refused to be erased. Their music, once perfect, now faltered into syncopated madness. Yet deep within that chaos, they felt pleasure, a flaw that is flawless. The four gods convened once more, drawn by necessity. The laughter was spreading too quickly, bending not just their realms but reality itself. They gathered upon a plane of shadow, where existence still obeyed rules. Tizentia spoke first, his voice is layered like glass shards. He is rewriting the warp into parody. Khorne's growl shook the plane. He desecrates war. My warriors cannot kill when they are laughing. Slaanesh's whisper followed, sweet and trembling. He turns desire inward. My chosen now chased joy instead of perfection. Nurgle merely chuckled. And yet I find myself lighter than ever. Have you not felt it, siblings? The burden gone, the sorrow eased, he has given us rest. The other gods turned toward him, furious, but Nurgle only smiled, dripping joy and rot alike. Meanwhile, within the storm, Wade's laughter grew louder, no longer confined to his throat or his mask, but vibrating through every atom of creation. He stood at the center of the warp, barefoot upon nothing, the glow around him shifting like an aurora painted by an insane artist. He held no weapon, wore no crown. He simply existed, and by existing, he distorted everything else. You guys really needed this, he said softly, as though speaking to old friends. You've been fighting for, what, eternity? Over what? Eternity. Over what? Soul's control. You're all just kids fighting over crayons in a sandbox made of screaming light. His words became law as he spoke them. The warp calmed, not silent, but laughing quietly to itself, as if the entire fabric of existence had just realized the absurdity of its own drama. On Holy Terra, the Emperor's tarot shattered. The Imperial psychers fell silent mid-chant. A strange warmth filled the golden throne chamber, a feeling none of the custards could identify. One whispered, Did he just breathe? In the void between galaxies, a lost Mechanicus frigate caught fragments of Vox transmission, static interspersed with a voice that could only be described as amused. Hi, this is your friendly local god of irony. Please remain calm and enjoy your meaningless existence. And they did. Foo you. For one miraculous instant, the galaxy stopped fighting. The warp ceased its screaming. Tyrannids paused their endless consumption. Even Necrons halted their cold march. Across the cosmos, from the lowest hive rat to the highest saint, every sentient creature felt the same inexplicable thing, relief. Not victory. Not salvation. Just the release that comes when you stop pretending the pain makes sense. The laughter swelled, gentle now, filling the cracks of creation like golden light, and at its center, Wade Wilson, no longer man, no longer merely fool, looked down upon the universe he had accidentally healed through mockery and madness. See, wasn't that funny? He whispered. You just needed to exhale. The warp rippled in answer. Its old rules broke, its gods trembled, and its newest occupant, the laughing god of irony, smiled, because he knew the punchline wasn't over. Beyond the veil, new voices were beginning to whisper prayers, not in fear, not in worship, but in absurd gratitude. And every one of those prayers ended the same way, a thanks Deadpool. The laughter had not stopped for 9 solar days. Not in the warp, not in the material, not in the minds of men. Across the Imperium, psychic choirs wept as reality itself began to slip into hysteria. Astropathic messages dissolved into nonsense. Ship navigators saw clowns instead of constellations. Even the prayers of the ecclesiarchy turned strange. Hymns now rhymed, psalms now looped, and holy relics smiled when no one was looking. Entire systems were abandoning function, not from rebellion or plague, but because no one could remember why they did anything at all. Something had to be done, so the Inquisition gathered. On a dead moon orbiting Cadius ruins, beneath a cathedral made of rusted steel and broken faith, the Ordo Malleus assembled its greatest minds, inquisitors, grey knights, tech magi, sanctioned psychers, and even one silent sister of silence whose presence muted the madness for a few brief breaths at a time. The air smelled of burning incense and desperation. Inquisitor Lord Dragar, older now, hollow-eyed and trembling, addressed them from the pulpit. You have all seen the signs. This laughter, this infection, is spreading. It corrupts not through temptation or promise, but through joy. The word left a bitter taste in his mouth. He slammed a fist against the podium. The warp has changed. The great powers are retreating into their own confusion. Our astropaths report psychic waves that heal as much as they destroy, Planets once plagued by Nurgle's rot now sprout flowers that sing. Khorne's cults have ceased battle to compose poetry. Even Tzench's followers wander aimlessly, claiming they've lost the plot. This cannot stand. Silence. Then one voice, Inquisitor Vox, her hair turned white by what she had seen aboard the Sanctum Obsidian so long ago. "You mean him," she said softly. "The red one." The laughter. Dragar nodded grimly. A Deadpool, the being once known as Wade Wilson. He was never meant for this universe, and yet he has rewritten it. If he is not stopped, there will be no Imperium, no chaos, no order, only absurdity, and I will not see the galaxy reduced to a joke. A murmur rippled through the assembly. Vox stepped forward. "And what would you have us do, my lord? The warp itself bends to him. Even demons flee his presence. You cannot exercise a god of irony." "We will not exercise him," Dragar said. "We will erase him. We will erase him." At his signal, the Mechanicus Adepts unveiled a machine, a titanic construct of bronze and obsidian, its core pulsing with a light that hurt to look at. Cables connected it to bound psychers whose eyes had already burned away. "The paradox engine," Dragar announced. "A weapon of pure logic. It will impose reason upon the warp. No contradictions, no laughter, only truth." The Sister of Silence looked up from her post, her eyes hollow. Even without words, her thought echoed in their minds. Truth is crueler than madness. But it was already too late. The paradox engine activated. A blinding wave surged outward, rippling through the void. The warp screamed as reality tried to remember how to make sense again. The laughter faltered. For a heartbeat, the stars went still, and then he arrived. The air fractured like glass as Wade Wilson stepped through, still in his crimson suit, but now limned with the faint glow of divinity. The walls warped around him in slow applause. "Wow," he said, clapping his hands. "A giant brain blender powered by misery. You guys really need hobbies." Bolters were raised, psychic wards flared, but no one fired. His presence made it impossible to act with intent. He smiled gently, almost sadly. "You're trying to fix the joke, don't you get it? The joke is the fix." Dragar drew his bolt pistol anyway, handshaking. "Abomination, you mock creation, you make light of sacrifice." Wade stepped closer, unarmed. "A sacrifice? Buddy, I've lived it. Every loss, every death, every pointless punchline. Number for say, you don't fix pain by worshipping it. You survive it by laughing at it. That's how mortals fight gods." "Enough!" Dragar fired. The bolt stopped midair, frozen, spinning slowly, then dissolving into a tiny shower of glitter. Wade looked down at the old man. "You're aiming at the wrong target." He pointed toward the paradox engine. "That thing? It's just another joke pretending to be serious." Before anyone could move, Wade reached out and touched it. The machine screamed. Logic imploded. Equations tore themselves apart. The psychers connected to it began to laugh, and that laughter turned to sobs, and the sobs to silence. The engine folded inward, vanishing into a single point of absurdity, a cosmic punchline so potent it rewrote the air. Vox stared in horror. "You destroyed it." Wade said, smiling faintly. "We just rephrased it." Dragar fell to his knees, blood leaking from his nose. "What are you doing to us?" "I'm giving you perspective," Wade said softly. "The Emperor sits on a golden chair while billions die for his name. The gods feed on souls that will never understand them. The Inquisition burns worlds to save them. And all of you forgot to live. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the warp around the moon stopped moving. Then, gently, Wade stepped forward and placed a hand on Dragar's shoulder. "You know, for a guy who hates jokes, you've been living in one your whole life." And with that he was gone, vanished like the punchline of a story that never needed to end. When the Inquisitors dared to look up again, the moon's sky was full of laughter. Not sound, but light, color, the shimmer of something greater than understanding. Vox turned toward the heavens, tears in her eyes. "He's not destroying the galaxy," she whispered. "He's rewriting it, rewriting." Somewhere beyond, the Chaos Gods felt it too. The reshaping of their realms, the new rhythm of absurdity that made them smaller, gentler, almost human. The universe was laughing, and for the first time in 100,000 years so did the Emperor. It was faint, only a breath, but the sound echoed through the warp like a sunrise breaking across eternity, and the gods, even the laughing one, fell silent to listen. For a single instant, perhaps a heartbeat, perhaps eternity, the entire galaxy existed in silence, not peace, not calm, silence. The kind that comes before the punchline. Every star, every soul, every atom of the warp waited to hear the end of the story. Then the laughter returned. It started as a whisper in the void, a chuckle inside a dying star. It spread to the astropathic choirs who began to giggle mid-chant, to the warriors of the Adeptus Astartes who dropped their bolters as they felt joy creep into their bones, to demons who forgot to scream. Everywhere, reality bent at the seams, and there, in the crack between the real and the impossible, stood Deadpool. He wasn't shining anymore. He wasn't divine. He simply was, a man in red, hands in his pockets, mask torn, standing on the edge of the universe as though it were a stage. Behind him, the warp burned in technicolor. Before him, the stars blinked like an audience waiting for the next line. He looked out across infinity and sighed. You ever tell a joke so good it kills the room? No one answered. He grinned anyway. From the warp, the four gods emerged, diminished, uncertain, almost mortal in their confusion. Khorne's brass throne cracked beneath his weight. Tizenchi's many eyes wept molten light. Nurgle's garden wilted under its own melancholy. Slaanesh's beauty trembled, uncertain whether to sing or scream. They had gathered for judgment, but none dared speak first. Deadpool spread his arms as if greeting old friends. You know, I didn't mean to ruin the show. You guys had a good thing going. Misery, madness, despair, all the usual crowd pleasers. But somewhere along the way, you forgot the punchline, Yana, but say. Tizenchi's voice was a rasping chord. You speak of endings as if you understand them. Wade shrugged. Who said it's an ending? Maybe it's a setup. Khorne snarled, the sound hollow. You mock even now? You have unmade legions. You have turned slaughter into laughter. Exactly. Wade said, pointing a finger at him. You built an entire religion out of anger and didn't realize that fury is just passion without purpose. Everyone's been playing their part so long they forgot they were actors. Slaanesh leaned forward, their voice trembling like a string pulled too tight. And what are you then, fool? The director? The critic? Wade turned to them, tilting his head. No, I'm the audience that forgot to leave. Something rippled through the warp, a wave that wasn't sound but meaning. The gods froze. They understood then. The laughter, the madness, the contradictions, they weren't accidents. They were reflections. Deadpool had not invaded their universe. He had revealed it. The warp had always been absurd. The gods had always been jokes told by the fears of mortal. Khorne's wrath, Tizenchi's schemes, Nurgle's love, Slaanesh's hunger, all punchlines written by desperate beings who wanted to make sense of chaos. And now, standing before them was the truth made flesh, a fool who made no sense and thus belonged more than they ever had. Wade paced slowly across the nothingness, boots leaving ripples that looked like ink in water. You think I'm your enemy? I'm not. I'm your mirror. You're the punchline. I'm just the laughter that follows. Khorne roared and charged, but his step slowed with every heartbeat. The closer he came, the smaller he became, his form unraveling into the fury of mortals who once prayed to him. He swung his axe, and it shattered into the dust of forgotten battles. Wade caught one of the fragments, blowing it away like ash. See? Rage isn't eternal, it's just loud. Tizen reached for him, eyes flickering with equations that defied logic. You cannot exist. You are contradiction without cause. Yeah, Wade said, smiling sadly. That's what living feels like. The architect of fate screamed as his form collapsed into color, a kaleidoscope of unfulfilled plans spiraling into laughter. Slaanesh tried next. You cannot mock perfection, they shrieked, voice breaking. Wade turned to them, his voice soft. Perfection is the cruelest joke of all. The god of excess dissolved into light and echo, leaving behind the faintest hum. A single note of music, unresolved. Only Nurgle remained, vast and weeping joyfully. I knew you'd come to this, he murmured. You're not destruction, little fool. You're healing. Wade smiled beneath the mask. Oh no, Grandpa. I'm just honest. Nurgle reached out a rotted hand and Wade took it. The two stood in silence for a moment that might have lasted forever. The god of decay and the god of laughter united in understanding that neither could ever truly end. Then Nurgle faded, leaving the faint smell of wet earth and rain, and so it was that the four gods were gone. The warp dimmed, its infinite noise softening into a murmur of voices, the countless souls of the dead no longer screaming, no longer praying, simply being. Wade stood alone at the center of it all. The light of creation reflected in his eyes, and for the first time since entering this universe, he looked tired. I guess that's it, he said quietly. I told the joke. The universe trembled. stars flickered, planets paused in their orbits, even the Emperor's psychic flame flickered in its throne. And then Wade whispered the punchline. No one ever remembered the words. The sound itself was erased from the warp, from memory, from time. But in its echo, galaxies were remade. Worlds destroyed by chaos began to heal, the eye of terror closed, its storm fading into a tranquil nebula. Mortals awoke from nightmares they hadn't known they were having. For one eternal instant, everything made sense. And then, just as quickly, it didn't, because sense itself had been the joke. Somewhere far away, a child laughed for no reason at all. And in the warp's stillness, Wade Wilson turned, bowed to the audience no one could see, and stepped into the dark between realities, leaving behind a universe still trying to understand why it felt so. Light. Behind him only laughter remained, infinite, gentle, and true. Darkness. Not the cruel kind that devours, but the kind that rests. The warp. Once a storm of hunger and madness, now drifted like a dream after waking. The laughter had faded into something softer, an echo folded into the rhythm of existence. Where once screamed a billion souls, there was quiet, not because all had died, but because for the first time nothing needed to shout. From that quiet came a voice, small, human. Hello? A spark flickered in the void, a spark flickered in the void, the faint shimmer of red against endless black. A hand reached out of nothing, then another, and with a grunt that seemed to echo across eternity, Wade Wilson pulled himself into being once again. Okay, he muttered, brushing imaginary dust off his armor, a note to self. Next time you rewrite the laws of reality, bring snacks. He looked around. No thrones, no gods, no screaming, just the hum of creation breathing in its sleep. It was beautiful, terrifyingly so. Huh? He whispered. I guess I did it. The end of everything, and everyone's fine. That's new. Something in the dark shimmered. Faint golden light, rippling like the reflection of dawn on still water. He turned toward it, squinting. A throne emerged, but not the brass one of Khorne, nor the silk and mirrors of Slaanesh. This was simpler, a thing of light and quiet power, Mahawa. Upon it sat the Emperor, but not as he had been depicted, not skeletal, not bound in gold, not divine, just a man. His armor dulled, his face pale but alive, his eyes ancient and tired. When he spoke, his voice filled the void without echo. Wade Wilson. Wade froze. Whoa. Whoa. Okay, I was expecting St. Peter, maybe Deadpool 3 casting call, but you're big league. The Emperor studied him with the faintest trace of curiosity, and Wade swore, amusement. You have undone what I and the gods have perpetuated. You have turned faith into laughter and chaos into understanding. Wade shrugged. Yeah, well, someone had to cut the tension. The Emperor leaned forward slightly. Do you know what you are now? Wade looked down at his gloved hands. They glowed faintly, not with power but with something quieter, possibility, a mistake probably. Or maybe the punchline to someone else's bad day. The Emperor's lips curved, almost a smile. A mistake that saved creation. Now that's weirdly inspiring, Wade said. I might put that on a shirt. They stood in silence. Around them the remnants of the warp shifted, no longer a wound in reality, but a mirror reflecting both of them. A god and a fool, neither greater nor lesser, both absurd in their persistence. Finally, the Emperor spoke again. What will you do now? Wade looked around at the infinite empty cosmos. I don't know. Maybe start over. Write a new joke. Something lighter this time. Less cosmic trauma, more sitcom energy. Everybody hates chaos. The Emperor regarded him quietly, then nodded once. Then go. Whatever you are, god, man, or jest, you have earned the right to begin again. Wade tilted his head. You know, that's the nicest thing anyone said to me since ever. He turned to leave, then paused. Hey, before I go. Serious question. You ever laugh? The Emperor's golden eyes flickered. Once, good answer. Wade gave a mock salute, spun on his heel and stepped off the edge of eternity. Light burst outward, swallowing him whole. The universe shivered, then exhaled. On Terra, the astronomer flared brighter than it had in 10,000 years. Navigators across the Imperium fell to their knees crying, not in pain but in something they didn't have words for. Some called it joy, others madness, a few divine comedy. In the eye of terror, new constellations appeared, stars forming shapes that only the deranged could recognize. A mask. 2 crossed swords, a grin carved into the void. On Cadia's ruins, flowers grew through ash, each one red, each one somehow smirking, and in every shadow of every mind that had ever prayed or cursed or screamed at the stars, a single whisper remained, not a prophecy, not a warning, but a reminder, a reminder. The universe isn't cruel, it's just badly written. That whisper became legend. Across millennia, cults of laughter emerged in hidden corners of the galaxy, not worshipping, not kneeling, simply remembering. They painted their walls with jokes that no one understood, wore masks that smiled no matter how dark the world became. Their creed was simple: don't fear the gods. They're laughing too. And somewhere beyond time, in a corner of the Imperium untouched by fear or faith, a red-suited figure sat on a rock, legs swinging, humming off key. He watched universes spin and die, watched mortals rise and fall, and grinned behind his mask. A knock, knock, he whispered to no one. The void waited. "Who's there?" he chuckled softly. Exactly. The sound echoed through eternity, a joke that never ended, a laughter that never died. And so the fifth god of chaos, the fool divine, the paradox of joy, the unkillable punchline, remained, not to rule, not to destroy, just to remind the cosmos to breathe. The laughter faded into the hum of creation, looping forever, until even eternity learned to smile.